The rumble of collapsing rock echoed through the narrow tunnels of Mercury's belly, like a cosmic burp from a god who had one too many planets for dinner. Dr. Quillen Sable, a man who looked like he'd lost a wrestling match with a particularly vengeful cactus, winced as another tremor threatened to turn his skeletal frame into a decorative wall smear. "Any chance we can get hazard pay for this gig, Quillen?" grunted Dax, the team's excavation specialist and resident doomsday prophet, as he wiped a layer of alien dust off his visor. If pessimism was an Olympic sport, Dax would have a trophy case so full they'd have to build a new wing in his honor. Quillen snorted, his lips curling into a wry smile that suggested he knew exactly how much danger they were in, and found it amusing in a laugh-so-you-don't-cry sort of way. "You mean the hazard pay, or that we might accidentally blow up the solar system bonus?" "I'd settle for not dying in a planetary fart," Dax muttered, ducking as a piece of ceiling decided it didn't like its current location. They were a ragtag band of xenorchaeologists, digging where no sane person would, driven by the twin gods of curiosity and recklessness. The alien base they'd stumbled upon was ancient, its architecture as impenetrable as a bureaucrat's soul, and twice as hostile. "How's it look up there, Juno?" Quillen called into his comm, addressing the team's drone operator who was perched at the cavern's mouth like a hawk waiting to pounce on a particularly unwary pigeon. Static crackled, and then Juno's voice, as dry as Mercury's surface, came through. "Well, if ancient alien death traps are your thing, then it's a real estate dream." Quillen chuckled, the sound bouncing off the hollow walls like a ghost with a dirty joke. "So, just like home then. The archaeological find was a researcher's wet dream and an insurance company's worst nightmare." In the dim light, the alien technology seemed to hum with an energy that suggested maybe it hadn't yet realized it was extinct. "I've seen fresher relics in my grandma's attic," quipped Dax, nudging a panel that promptly disintegrated like a sugar cube in a cup of hot tea. Quillen knelt beside a complex array of what looked suspiciously like control panels. The markings were indecipherable, a language long lost to the winds of time, or the solar winds of Mercury to be more precise. Juno had suggested they might be buttons of some kind, and Quillen, in a moment of supreme wisdom or equally supreme stupidity, had suggested pressing them. Because why not? "You know," said Dax, watching with that mix of fascination and horror one usually reserved for reality TV, "there's a chance that button could activate a death ray, or a cosmic blender." Quillen shrugged, his fingers hovering over the panel like a pianist about to play his final sonata. "Well, I promised the wife I'd try new things." The button clicked depressingly easily, a sound that somehow carried a sense of imminent doom. Lights flickered to life, bathing the cavern in a sickly green glow that could only be described as alien nightclub chic. "I think you just turned on the mood lighting," Dax said, his voice tinged with an admiration usually reserved for pyromaniacs finding a new, exciting shade of fire. "Oh good, because I was worried we wouldn't be able to see the giant alien monsters coming," Quillen replied, peering into the shadows now cast in eerie relief. As the team ventured deeper into the base, they stumbled upon what could only be described as an ancient command center. The room was dominated by a massive console, its purpose as mysterious as Quillen's love for pineapple pizza. "Dr. Sable," the AI assistant Corvus, chimed in from Quillen's wrist device. "I detect a significant energy reading." Quillen raised an eyebrow. "How significant are we talking? Enough to toast a marshmallow, or are we talking blow up a small moon levels?" "Somewhere in between toast and annihilate," Corvus responded with the robotic equivalent of a shrug. "Great," Quillen said dryly, imagining the eulogy at his funeral. "He died doing what he loved, poking things he shouldn't." "Hey, you guys might want to see this." Juno's voice cut through their banter, tinged with something that might have been fear or indigestion, hard to tell with her. The team gathered around a holographic display Juno had activated. It depicted a star system, eerily similar to their own but with a disturbing addition, a massive supernova expanding at an alarming rate, swallowing planets whole. "Well, that's cheerful," Quillen remarked, watching as the simulation ended in an explosion that looked uncomfortably final. "Is that us?" Dax asked, his usual sarcasm replaced by genuine concern. Quillen shook his head, a grim smile on his lips. "No, but it might be a postcard from our future." The room fell silent, each of them grappling with the magnitude of the discovery. The heat death, an end not just for them but for everything. And if the universe was sending out invitations, humanity had a front row ticket. "So, what now?" Dax asked, breaking the silence with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. "We do what humans do best," Quillen declared, a glint of defiance in his eyes. "We figure out how to screw with fate." As they began to delve deeper into the mysteries of the base, Quillen couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, they were on the verge of something bigger than they'd ever imagined. And that was either the most exciting or most terrifying thing he'd ever considered. "And if we fail," Dax pressed, clearly determined to win gold in the pessimism Olympics. Quillen chuckled, the sound echoing hollowly in the alien architecture. "Then at least we won't have to pay our bar tabs." The team moved on, driven by the mix of fear, curiosity, and that peculiar brand of human stubbornness that refuses to acknowledge the odds. As they explored, the secrets of the base began to unravel, each revelation more mind-bending than the last. "This place is like a Russian doll of bad ideas," Juno mused, examining another chamber filled with instruments that seemed designed solely to give her nightmares. "Yeah," Quillen agreed. "But unlike dolls, these can probably kill us." The day dragged on, the team uncovering more about the alien civilization's bleak history. It seemed they had been obsessed with the heat death, their entire society focused on understanding and, if possible, averting it. "So they failed," Dax said, his tone carrying the weight of inevitability. "Or they left us a lifeline," Quillen countered, optimism laced with a heavy dose of pragmatism. "Or a really elaborate practical joke." As they prepared to leave for the day, Quillen's mind buzzed with possibilities, each more terrifying and brilliant than the last. He couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was challenging humanity, daring them to rise above their petty squabbles and defy the cosmic end. "And you think we can beat the universe at its own game?" Juno asked as they made their way back up to the surface, leaving the alien ruins behind. Quillen smirked, a glint of rebellion in his eyes that suggested he was born for this kind of insane gamble. "Well, we've been beating the odds for a while now. Maybe it's time to up the stakes." Dax laughed, the sound a rare burst of genuine amusement. "And if we fail, then I'm sure the universe will make a lovely epitaph for us," Quillen replied, his tone light even as the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on them. As they emerged into Mercury's harsh light, the team paused, looking back at the hidden base. The secrets it held felt like a ticking time bomb, one they had to defuse or risk blowing everything they knew to stardust. "So, what's the plan, boss?" Dax asked, his sarcasm a thin veneer over the seriousness of the situation. "We do what humans do best," Quillen said, repeating his earlier conviction with a determination that seemed to echo across the barren landscape. "We adapt, we survive, and most importantly, we annoy the hell out of anyone who tells us we can't." The team laughed, a sound that reverberated against the rocks, a defiant chorus against the silence of space. As they prepared to leave, Quillen couldn't help but feel a spark of hope amidst the cynicism. Humanity might be flawed, reckless, and occasionally suicidal, but if the universe thought it could end them without a fight, it was in for a very rude awakening. With one last look at the alien base, Quillen turned away, already planning their next move. The heat death might be inevitable, but so was humanity's refusal to go gently into that good night. "Game on," he whispered to the void, a fierce grin cutting across his face. "Game on. All right, Quillen said, standing amidst the chaos of what looked like an alien kindergarten's art project gone violently wrong. If anyone has a magic decoder ring for this mess, now would be an excellent time to whip it out. There they were, the esteemed xenorchaeologists, gathered around what was certainly a crucial piece of alien history, if only they could decipher it. The walls of the chamber were covered in inscriptions that were as chaotic as a toddler on a sugar high. Dax squinted at the symbols. Looks like the aliens were big fans of abstract art, he quipped. Pretty sure I've seen this on a cereal box somewhere. Juno, ever the pragmatist, had her drone scanning the carvings, the little machine floating around like a particularly nosy ghost. Well, if it's a warning label, it's definitely not in any language I've ever heard. Quillen scratched his chin, which always seemed to be 5 o'clock shadow and 2 days' worth of grime. Remember, kids, if you don't understand the alien language, it might just be swearing at you. Dax nodded sagely. Yeah, like a cosmic don't press the red button kind of deal. Or maybe it's please don't spit in the reactor, or beware of intergalactic jellyfish, Juno added, not missing a beat. Which, you'll agree, would be a handy guideline. Quillen leaned closer to the wall, tracing a line of characters that seemed to lead into an elaborate diagram. Corvus, buddy, got anything for us? The AI assistant chimed in, crisp and efficient, as if it didn't know it was stuck with a bunch of meatbags destined for a bad ending. Translating. The inscriptions appear to depict a timeline of cosmic events. Great, Dax muttered, a cosmic calendar. Can we pencil in don't explode somewhere? Juno tapped her foot impatiently. What kind of events are we talking about, Corvus? Alien bake sales, intergalactic dance-offs, entropic demise, Corvus replied, in a tone that was both matter-of-fact and utterly unhelpful. Quillen frowned. Could you elaborate, Corvus? My comprehension of cosmic doom is a bit rusty. The inscriptions suggest an advanced understanding of the universe's eventual energy decline. Commonly referred to as the heat death, Corvus said, as if explaining the intricacies of tea brewing. Ah yes, the heat death, Dax drawled, where everything runs out of steam like me after 2 hours of paperwork. The realization settled into their bones like a weighty truth. Despite the edge of sarcasm in their voices, there was an undeniable gravity to the revelation. These aliens, whoever they were, understood the endgame. Everything would wind down, run out of energy, become a cold, dark husk. Juno turned to Quillen, eyes sharp and speculative. So, what's the plan, Captain Optimism? Do we just wait and hope the universe puts on a sweater? Quillen shrugged. I'd say we start by making sure we're not setting off any galactic booby traps. Dax raised an eyebrow. And then we figure out how we're going to not die, Quillen said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. You know, in case the universe decides to speedrun its demise. The team fell into a contemplative silence, a rare occurrence in their line of work. It was one thing to face the daily grind of possible death by cosmic anomaly, quite another to ponder the universe's end. All right, Quillen clapped his hands together with mock enthusiasm. Let's play a round of who can outwit the universe. Juno snorted, shaking her head. I'll take surefire ways to destroy ourselves for 500, Alex. Hey, humanity's been screwing things up and surviving since day one, Quillen pointed out. Why stop now? Dax scratched his head. Are you seriously suggesting we can outlast the universe? Not outlast, Quillen corrected. Outsmart. Look, I'm all for optimism, but are you sure this isn't just the start of a midlife crisis, Dr. Sable? Juno asked with a crooked smile. Quillen shrugged. What else am I going to do in my midlife crisis? Buy a shiny new spaceship and have an affair with a Martian, Dax chuckled. Well, you've already got the adventure part down. Just missing the convertible, or the Martian, Juno added with a smirk. The team's banter bounced off the cavern walls, filling the air with a semblance of normalcy, a reminder that humor was their best defense against the madness of the cosmos. The truth was, they needed hope, even if it came wrapped in the cynical shell of humor. All right, let's assume this timeline is a warning, Quillen said, steering them back to the task. What do we do about it? Assuming we can do anything, maybe we start by understanding what the aliens were trying to achieve, Juno suggested. Corvus, can we get any more detail on their attempts analyzing? Corvus replied, its voice a soothing monotone despite the dire situation. The inscriptions mention attempts to reverse entropy. Their last entries imply efforts to create a self-sustaining energy matrix. Ah, the old perpetual motion machine trick, Dax said, crossing his arms. Best of luck with that one, aliens. Quillen leaned back, staring at the inscrutable wall as if it might suddenly start talking. They failed or they got bored and went on a cosmic vacation. Still, they might have left behind some breadcrumbs, Juno pointed out. We just need to figure out what they were trying to do. Quillen nodded. All right, team. Let's scamper through this base like rats in a cheese factory and see if we can find any clues. You really know how to rally the troops, boss, Dax deadpanned. Hey, if we're going down, at least we'll do it with style, Quillen shot back, flashing a grin that said he was mostly serious. They split up, exploring different sections of the chamber, looking for anything that might give them a lead. It was a desperate act, the kind only suited for those who dared to dream bigger than reality allowed. Got something? Juno's voice echoed, drawing the team back together like moths to the flame of curiosity. She was standing in front of a console that had been hidden behind layers of dust and debris. The screen flickered uncertainly, like a dim star trying to shine one last time. Alien symbols danced across the interface, waiting for someone or something to give it life. Corvus, any idea what this is? Quillen asked, already poking at buttons like a child with a new toy. The AI response was cautious. It appears to be a central processing unit for the facility. It might contain data on their entropic experiments. Translation. It's either our answer or another cosmic blender, Dax quipped. Juno rolled her eyes. Can't wait to find out which. Quillen looked over the console, his fingers hovering above the keys. All right, let's see if this place has any secrets it wants to share. As he keyed in a sequence prompted by Corvus, the machine whirred to life, its display shifting to show a three-dimensional model of an intricate structure, pulsing with energy lines that intertwined like vines. Looks like a reactor of some sort, Dax noted. One hell of a fancy one, or one hell of a death trap depending on how you look at it, Juno said, squinting at the display. Quillen studied the model, fascinated despite the potential for disaster. If this thing's what I think it is, it might just be the key to everything. Or it might be the key to us getting vaporized, Dax countered, ever the realist. Details, Quillen said with a dismissive wave. Corvus, can you figure out what we're dealing with processing? The AI responded, its digital brain whirring away. The model appears to depict a gravitational energy converter, designed to harvest and redistribute cosmic background radiation. Juno's eyes widened. You're telling me this thing can basically eat the universe's leftovers and keep running? Essentially, yes, Corvus said. Although the technology is beyond current human capabilities, it represents a significant breakthrough. Does it come with a user manual? Dax asked, only half joking. Quillen smirked. We'll just have to figure it out the old-fashioned way. Trial and error, mostly error if history's taught us anything, Juno remarked dryly. Quillen studied the model, his mind racing with the possibilities. If they could unlock the secrets of this technology, it might change everything, or at least buy humanity some time before the universe decided to punch its ticket. So, what now? Dax asked, looking to Quillen for guidance. We take this knowledge back, Quillen said, determination in his voice. And we make sure the rest of humanity knows what we've found, and if they tell us it's impossible, Juno pressed, ever the devil's advocate. Then we remind them that impossible is just another word for hasn't been tried yet, Quillen replied with a grin. The team nodded, the weight of their findings settling over them like a cloak. They were heading into the unknown, armed only with hope, humor, and the human spirit's relentless curiosity. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to return to the surface, Quillen couldn't help but feel a flicker of excitement. In a universe that seemed hell-bent on ending itself, they'd stumbled upon a glimmer of potential, a chance to thumb their noses at entropy and declare, "Not today, heat death." And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As they trudged back to the surface, leaving behind the alien mysteries and their grim predictions, Quillen took a deep breath of the stale, recycled air and smiled. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," he said, a hint of mischief in his voice. Dax rolled his eyes. "When don't we?" "True," Quillen acknowledged, "but this time we're gambling with the universe itself." Juno grinned, matching his energy. "And I've always loved a good game." With one last look at the alien base, the team turned away, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Because if there was one thing humanity excelled at, it was defying the odds and laughing in the face of cosmic doom. And that was a game they were born to play. Just as Quillen and his merry band of misfits were preparing to leave the alien base, no doubt planning to regale the universe with tales of their newfound cosmic blender, Mercury decided to get in on the action. The ground rumbled beneath their feet like a mule with an attitude problem, reminding them that the base was, in fact, older than their grandmother's grudges. "Great," Juno muttered, leaning against a wall that seemed to vibrate like an out-of-tune guitar string. "Now the planet's throwing a tantrum. Think of it as free entertainment," Dax quipped, scanning the ceiling as dust rained down like cosmic dandruff. "Who needs fireworks when you've got tectonics?" Quillen raised an eyebrow, his gaze darting around the chamber. "Let's hope this place isn't planning to collapse before we get out. I didn't exactly sign up for a death by cave-in. Would look bad on the resume," Juno agreed, eyes darting back to the console they had just revived from its ancient nap. "Corvus," Quillen barked, trying to make himself heard over the increasingly frantic groans of the structure. "Any chance you can give us a status update that doesn't involve the words imminent and doom in the same sentence?" Analyzing seismic activity, Corvus replied, its voice as calm as a yoga instructor at a morgue. "Structural integrity compromised. Recommend immediate evacuation." "Well, isn't that just a ray of sunshine?" Dax snorted. "What's our plan, fearless leader? Got a magic carpet in your back pocket?" Ignoring the jab, Quillen drummed his fingers against his chin. "We need a way to stabilize this place long enough to get out, and maybe figure out how not to lose our shiny new toy." Juno's eyes flicked to the glowing console. "If they were trying to reverse entropy, maybe we can use some of that tech to keep the base in one piece." "Worth a shot," Quillen agreed, his mind racing. "Corvus, can you access any of the base's stabilization systems?" "Anything we can use to buy some time." Attempting interface, Corvus replied, the console's lights flickering like a disco from hell. "The system appears resistant to traditional commands." "That's just tech speak for it's a stubborn piece of junk," Dax commented, hands on his hips. "Tell me about it," Quillen said, his hands moving over the console with the urgency of a man trying to defuse a bomb while the timer laughed at him. "Corvus, override whatever alien firewall this place has. We need control, and we need it now." As the rumbling intensified, Juno and Dax exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their confidence in surviving long enough to complain about it later. "There's a manual control interface," Juno pointed out, tapping a holographic panel that blinked into existence. "We might be able to redirect some of the energy to reinforce the structure." Quillen nodded, his mind a blur of calculations and reckless optimism. "Then let's see if we can convince this old beast to play nice." With a few deft movements, Quillen and Juno manipulated energy flows through the alien base's systems. It was like convincing a cat to take a bath, frustrating, resistant, and with a high chance of ending badly. Dax hovered nearby, his sarcasm failing to mask the tension in his voice. "So, how many alien engineers does it take to screw in a light bulb?" "Apparently more than 3, Juno muttered, swiping at the interface with a mixture of desperation and determination. Quillen's brow furrowed as he keyed in commands that would have baffled even the most seasoned of human engineers. "Come on, you relic. Give me something." A moment later, the base's ancient systems groaned and creaked like a pensioner trying to do yoga, but the tremors began to lessen just a tad. "Not bad," Dax said, relief coloring his voice. "Score 1 for human ingenuity. More like human desperation," Juno corrected, though a hint of a smile tugged at her lips. Quillen glanced over at them, his expression a mix of triumph and disbelief. "We might have bought ourselves a little time. Let's not waste it." The team quickly gathered their gear, nerves jangling with the knowledge that the very ground beneath their feet could betray them at any moment. With Corvus' guidance, they navigated the labyrinthine halls, every corner offering a new opportunity for disaster. "Corvus, any bright ideas on how to make sure this place doesn't crush us on the way out?" Quillen asked, his voice as dry as the Martian desert. Maintaining structural reinforcement at 60% efficacy, Corvus replied. "Recommend expeditious exit." "Expeditious exit," Dax repeated with a snort. "There's a phrase to strike confidence in the heart. Less talking, more moving," Juno said, already hustling down the corridor with the urgency of someone who'd just spotted last call at the bar. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors like reminders of how precarious their situation was. Quillen couldn't escape the feeling that the base was watching them, waiting for an excuse to collapse in on itself like a particularly melancholic souffle. "Any chance we can come back for more leisurely exploration once we're not at risk of being squished?" Dax asked, his tone light despite the gravity of the situation. "Only if we survive," Quillen replied. "I'm not exactly keen on becoming a permanent part of the architecture." As they approached the exit, another tremor shook the base, sending them stumbling, hearts racing with the adrenaline of impending doom. Quillen shot a look at Juno, who was already furiously tapping at her wrist-mounted interface. "Juno, how's our stability looking?" Quillen asked, though the shaking walls seemed to provide the answer. "Like a house of cards in a tornado," she replied, frowning at the data scrolling before her eyes. "If we're going to do anything with this technology, we'd better do it soon." "Hold that thought," Quillen said, nodding toward the exit as it came into view, their path to salvation. They burst out of the base, stumbling onto Mercury's surface, where the oppressive heat was a welcome relief from the suffocating confines of the shifting structure. The searing light of the sun felt like a rebuke, a reminder that the cosmos was far from a friendly place. "Made it," Dax said, panting and wiping sweat from his brow. "I'd celebrate, but I'm not convinced we're out of the woods yet." "Technically, we never were in the woods," Quillen replied, glancing back at the alien structure that loomed behind them like an unspoken question. With the immediate danger behind them, they took a moment to collect themselves, the realization of their brush with disaster settling over them like a heavy blanket. "So what's the plan now?" Juno asked, her tone a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Quillen considered their options, the weight of their discovery pressing down on him. It was both a burden and a potential boon, a chance to rewrite humanity's fate in the face of a universe that seemed hell-bent on oblivion. "We take what we've learned and see if we can adapt it," Quillen said slowly, his voice gaining strength with each word. "If those aliens were onto something with their energy matrix, we might be able to use it to our advantage." Dax raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched across his face. "You're talking about re-engineering alien tech that nearly buried us alive." "Exactly," Quillen replied, a determined glint in his eye. "We might not have all the answers, but we've got a damn good starting point. Not to mention a penchant for chaos," Juno added with a wry smile. "That's half the fun," Quillen said, his irrepressible optimism flaring up in the face of adversity. "We've always been at our best when the odds are stacked against us." They paused, the moment stretching between them as they contemplated the challenges ahead. It wasn't just about survival. It was about defying the very forces of nature that had seemed to conspire against them. "All right, "Let's get back and figure out how to make this work," Quillen said, his voice filled with a renewed sense of purpose. "We've got a universe to outsmart, and I've never been one to back down from a challenge." With that, they set off across the mercurial landscape, their minds buzzing with possibilities and the echoes of laughter still lingering in their ears. In a galaxy that seemed to relish chaos and entropy, they were determined to carve out a space for humanity, however reckless and irreverent it might be. Because at the end of the day, there was one thing they knew for certain. When push came to shove, humanity would do what it always did: stand up, crack a joke, and keep moving forward. Quillen Sable squinted at the series of glowing, alien symbols flickering across the ancient console, lines of alien script doing a drunken tango under his fingertips. He felt like a man trying to read a bedtime story to a particularly moody toddler, one that was liable to throw a tantrum at the slightest provocation. And given their recent brush with an impromptu funeral under a mountain of alien rubble, the stakes were pretty high. "All right, team, gather round," he called, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd seen too many things go wrong all at once. "We've got ourselves a bit of a situation. Another one," Dax muttered, rolling his eyes as he joined Quillen. "And here I was, hoping we'd left all the fun back inside that potential death trap. Mercury's hospitality leaves much to be desired," Juno quipped, leaning over to peer at the console. "What's the crisis, fearless leader?" Quillen sighed, gesturing at the chaotic swirl of data. "Looks like we've stumbled on an archive." The aliens were trying to get their heads around the concept of cosmic doom just like us. Cosmic doom. Dax chuckled sarcastically. "Sounds like the title of a bad holo flick, or a good one depending on your taste for apocalyptic thrillers," Juno added, her eyes narrowing at the symbols. "Can you make out any of it, Quillen?" "Bits and pieces," Quillen admitted, scratching at the stubble on his chin. "It's a lot of metaphysical mumbo-jumbo about entropic demise. Seems like these aliens were obsessed with surviving the universe's ultimate curtain call." "Great," Dax said, crossing his arms. "We're not just dealing with ancient tech. We're dealing with ancient tech designed by cosmic doomsday preppers. Could be worse," Juno offered with a shrug. "Could be a surprise birthday party." Quillen shot her a pointed look. "Given our luck, the cake would probably be rigged to explode." The tension in the air was palpable as the team huddled closer to the console, the alien script casting an eerie glow over their faces. It was like being around a campfire, except the only stories they were likely to hear involved the end of everything they held dear. "Corvus," Quillen said, turning to the team's ever-calm AI, "can you interface with this archive? We need to know what these aliens were planning." "Analyzing," Corvus replied, its voice as smooth as an oil spill. "Accessing data streams. The information is encoded in a complex format." "Of course it is," Dax said dryly. "It's not like anything's ever easy with these guys." "Decoding sequence initiated," Corvus continued, unfazed by Dax's sarcasm. "This may take some time. Time we don't exactly have in spades," Juno muttered, glancing nervously at the dusty horizon. "If those tremors were anything to go by, we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. Which is why we need to make sense of this data and fast," Quillen said, his voice grim. "If there's anything in here about stabilizing their tech or understanding the energy matrix, it could be our ticket to not being vaporized." The team settled in, tension coiling around them like a snake ready to strike. It was eerie, sitting there in the shadow of the alien base, the oppressive heat of Mercury making them sweat more than the fear of impending doom. "Looks like we really stepped in it this time," Quillen said, trying to break the silence. "All we need now is a hostile takeover by some ancient AI and we'll have the full set." "Don't jinx it," Dax warned, casting a wary eye at the console as if expecting it to sprout limbs and start issuing orders. Time slogged on, marked only by the soft hum of the console and the distant rumble of the unstable base behind them. It was a waiting game, and the stakes were higher than Dax's last poker match, the one where he'd lost his favorite pair of boots. Corvus, any progress? Juno asked, her patience wearing thinner than a politician's promise. Decoding nearing completion, Corvus replied, its tone as unflappable as ever. I am accessing the primary data logs now. Finally, some good news, Dax said, more to himself than anyone else. I was starting to think we'd be here until the sun went supernova. Let's see what our alien friends were so worked up about, Quillen said, leaning forward to study the console as the data began to unfurl before them. The archive was like a jigsaw puzzle assembled by someone with a vendetta against coherent thought. But gradually, a picture began to emerge, a picture that was about as comforting as a leaky spacesuit in a vacuum. Looks like they were trying to harness some kind of energy field, Quillen said slowly, piecing together the fragments of information. Something about stabilizing their environment against entropy, sort of like trying to build a lifeboat for the universe, Dax observed. Except their boat sank before it even hit the water, or the water evaporated, Juno added, shaking her head. What a mess. But if we can figure out how they intended to use this energy, maybe we can keep our own little lifeboat afloat, Quillen mused, his mind racing with possibilities. Or at least buy ourselves time to figure out a better plan, Juno pointed out, her fingers dancing across her wrist interface as she absorbed the data. Plans are overrated, Dax said with a grin. I say we wing it. Worked for me in the last 3 bar fights I got into, yeah. But those only cost you a few teeth, Quillen replied, his focus unwavering. This could cost us everything. The team fell silent, the weight of their situation pressing down on them as they worked to decipher the alien archive. It was a race against time, a high-stakes gamble with their lives on the line. All right, Quillen said after a while, his voice breaking the tense quiet. Here's what we need to do. We're going to adapt their energy matrix to reinforce the base structure. If we can stabilize the energy field, we might be able to keep this place from collapsing long enough to get a handle on their tech. Sounds easy enough, Dax quipped, though the set of his jaw betrayed his nerves. All we have to do is re-engineer a billion-year-old energy system using tools that are barely good enough to open a can of beans. Think of it as an extreme home makeover, Juno said, her humor a brittle shield against the fear gnawing at her insides. Corvus, Quillen called, begin reconfiguration of the energy matrix. Prioritize structural integrity. Reconfiguration initiated, Corvus replied. I will monitor the energy flow for anomalies. Good, because anomalies are about as welcome as a skunk at a perfume convention, Dax muttered, his eyes glued to the console. The seconds dragged on, each one feeling like a year as the team worked tirelessly to integrate their technology with the alien systems. It was a delicate dance, one wrong move away from disaster. Or, as Dax put it, like playing Twister with a tiger. Energy matrix is stabilizing, Corvus reported, its calm tone at odds with the tension in the air. Structural integrity improving. Improving is good, Juno said, a grin tugging at her lips despite herself. Now let's see if we can make it stick. Quillen nodded, his focus unwavering as he and Juno continued to manipulate the console. They were a well-oiled machine, moving in sync despite the chaos around them. Just don't ask me to do any of that fancy math, Dax said, hovering nearby like an over-enthusiastic cheerleader. I barely passed algebra, you and me both, Quillen replied, a rare smile breaking through the tension. But we've got this. Minutes turned into hours as they worked, sweat dripping down their faces as they battled against the clock. It was a brutal, exhausting process, but with each passing moment they grew more confident that they could pull it off. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Corvus delivered the news they'd been praying for. Energy matrix stabilized. Structural integrity at optimal levels. Not bad for a bunch of misfits, Dax said, his relief a palpable force in the air. Let's not get too cocky, Juno cautioned, though her eyes shone with triumph. We've bought ourselves time, but we're not out of the woods yet. Speaking of which, Quillen said, straightening up and wiping his brow, let's regroup and figure out our next move. We've got a lot of work ahead of us if we're going to turn this alien tech into something useful. With the threat of immediate collapse averted, the team took a moment to catch their breath, the gravity of their situation settling over them once more. They were in the thick of it now, knee-deep in a quagmire of alien technology and cosmic uncertainty. Yet despite the odds stacked against them, there was an undeniable spark of hope, a belief that, against all logic and reason, they might just pull this off. Because if there was one thing humanity was good at, it was surviving against all odds. And if Quillen and his team had anything to say about it, that wasn't about to change anytime soon. "All right, team," Quillen said, determination etched into every line of his face. "Let's get to work. We've got a universe to save, one outrageous plan at a time." With that, they dove back into the fray, driven by a stubborn refusal to give in to the chaos swirling around them. Because in a universe that seemed hell-bent on entropy and destruction, the only thing left to do was fight back, and maybe crack a few jokes along the way. The alien base groaned ominously, like a giant with indigestion. Quillen's sable straightened up from the console, stretching his back until it popped like a Rice Krispies commercial. "Okay, team," he said, trying to inject some optimism into a voice that had long since run out of it. "We've prevented immediate death by crushing, at least for now." "Fantastic," Dax replied, sarcasm dripping from his words like oil off a leaky ship. "I was just getting comfortable with the idea of becoming a pancake," Juno snorted. "A human pancake. Bet you'd still find a way to be bitter about the syrup." Quillen couldn't help but grin. They were all exhausted, nerves frayed like an old rope, but humor was their only weapon against the looming disaster. Well, that and a cosmic blender, which had become their all-purpose problem solver. If only it came with a manual or a decent recipe book. "Corvus, status on the power systems?" Quillen asked, turning his attention to the ever-reliable AI. The response was swift, yet somehow still calming enough to make one want to punch something. "The power systems are undergoing fluctuations, integrity at 62% and decreasing." Dax whistled, low and grim. 62%, eh? About as stable as my last relationship." "You had a relationship?" Juno shot back, eyebrows raised in mock astonishment. "I thought you just flirted with disaster." "Ha ha," Dax deadpanned. "You should do stand-up, if we make it out of this alive." Quillen rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the world, or at least this alien monstrosity they were squatting in, crushing down on him. "All right, focus everyone, we need a plan B." "Plan B?" Juno echoed, her voice colored with an edge of disbelief. "I was hoping for a miracle, not a sequel." "Well, miracles are in short supply," Quillen said dryly. "But if we can patch up the power systems, we might just buy ourselves enough time to figure out what the hell this place was supposed to be." Corvus chimed in. "I have detected anomalies in the power distribution network. Possible causes include alien wildlife interference or degradation of material due to age." "Alien wildlife?" Dax perked up. "Great, just what we need. As if this place wasn't enough of a death trap already." "Could be worse," Juno said, an eyebrow quirking. "Could be spiders." "Don't even joke," Dax groaned. "I'd rather face an alien armada than one eight-legged freak." "Fascinating priorities you have," Quillen commented. "Let's try and focus on keeping this place from becoming our tomb, shall we?" With a reluctant nod, Dax hunkered down by the console, fingers dancing over the screen like a drunk playing the piano. "Corvus, show me where the worst power leaks are." "If we're gonna plug these holes, we need to know where the water's getting in." "Displaying power grid schematics," Corvus responded. The alien symbols flickered across the screen, an indecipherable mess for most, but Dax squinted at them as if they were an old friend he'd rather not meet again. "Juno," Quillen said, shifting his focus. "Get that drone up and running. We need eyes on those conduits." "On it," Juno replied, her fingers moving with practiced ease. The drone hummed to life, hovering in the air like a particularly inquisitive insect. The base rumbled again, reminding them that it had all the structural integrity of wet cardboard. Quillen's gut twisted with anxiety. We've got to stabilize those lines. If the main power node goes, we won't have enough energy to save this place, let alone ourselves. Just once, Dax grumbled. I'd like to find an ancient alien ruin that doesn't try to murder us. Then we'd be out of a job, Juno shot back, sending the drone zipping down a corridor with a flick of her wrist. True, Dax conceded. Guess it's a living, huh? A living, Quillen echoed, though it felt more like dying slowly. They were on the edge, each moment ticking by with the subtlety of a bomb counting down. The drone's camera feed displayed on their screens, showing twisted corridors filled with debris and alien flora that had claimed the abandoned space as its own. It looked like a jungle scene out of a nightmare, all dark corners and creeping shadows. Well, Dax said, not bothering to hide his disdain, that's inviting. Are those vines or pipes? Juno asked, squinting at the screen. Does it matter? Dax shot back. Either way, they're probably plotting our demise. Quillen sighed, running a hand through his hair which had taken on the consistency of straw. We need to get to the main junction. If we can redirect the power flow, we might stabilize the systems for long enough to figure out the rest. Sounds simple enough, Dax said. Of course, simple plans usually end with screaming and regret. You're thinking of your last date, Juno teased. Funny, Dax replied, though his eyes never left the screen. But let's save the comedy routine for after we've cheated death. They moved quickly, navigating the alien labyrinth with the sort of familiarity that was born from necessity rather than comfort. Each step echoed in the empty halls, a reminder of how alone they were in this vast, forgotten relic of a civilization long gone. Corvus, Quillen called, his voice echoing. Keep us updated on any changes in the power flow. I don't want any surprises. Understood, Dr. Sable, Corvus replied, monitoring systems in real time. Quillen wished he shared Corvus's enviable calm. It was easy to be unflappable when you were just a voice in the machine. Flesh and blood, on the other hand, had a tendency to get sweaty palms and racing hearts. The corridor narrowed, walls closing in like a trap. The alien vines twisted along the surfaces, pulsing with a faint luminescence that made Quillen's skin crawl. It was like walking through a haunted forest, and he half expected something to jump out at them with every step. Here we are, Juno said as they stopped at a junction point, the heart of the power distribution network. It was a tangle of cables and conduits, all humming with an energy that felt more malevolent than life-sustaining. Looks like my aunt's knitting basket, Dax joked, though his voice was tight with tension. On a good day, Juno replied, setting the drone to scan the area. Let's see what we're dealing with. The drone's sensors mapped out the network, highlighting areas of concern in a glaring red that seemed to scream danger. There were breaches, gaps where the energy bled out into the void, a slow leak that threatened to empty their chances of survival. Okay, Quillen said, steeling himself. Let's get to work patching this mess up. We've got to stop the bleeding. Dax moved forward, tools in hand, his expression a mask of determination. I feel like a plumber in hell. We're going to need more than just elbow grease to fix this. We'll need some luck too, Juno agreed, already knee-deep in the mess, her hands deftly working to mend the breaks. Luck, Quillen echoed, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. And a miracle or two wouldn't hurt. As they worked, time seemed to slip away, measured not in minutes but in the frantic rhythm of their efforts and the relentless ticking of their impending doom. The base continued to groan ominously, a constant reminder that time was their enemy. Corvus, Quillen called, wiping sweat from his brow. How are we looking? Energy loss has decreased by 10%, Corvus reported. Stabilization is ongoing. 10%, Dax muttered. Guess it's better than a kick in the teeth. We need more, Juno said, her frustration evident. We're just patching holes in a sinking ship. Quillen nodded, feeling the weight of their situation pressing down on him like an avalanche. We knew this wouldn't be easy, but we've got no choice but to keep pushing. Stubbornness is our only virtue, Dax quipped. Besides, who needs sleep, right? Or sanity, Juno added, the corners of her mouth twitching upwards despite the grimness of their task. Together they continued to work, driven by a shared determination to see this through. Their hands moved with precision, each action a testament to their resilience, their refusal to give in to despair. "Doctor, Sable," Corvus interrupted, its voice cutting through their concentration. Incoming energy surge detected. Quillen's heart skipped a beat. "Source unknown," Corvus replied. "Possibly an external influence or internal anomaly." "Great," Dax groaned. "Just when things were getting interesting. We need to brace for impact," Juno said, her voice steady despite the tension thrumming through her. Quillen nodded, adrenaline spiking through his veins. "Everyone get ready. This could get rough." As the surge hit, the base shuddered violently, a ragged gasp escaping the ancient structure. The lights flickered, casting wild shadows that seemed to dance with glee at their impending demise. "Hold on," Quillen shouted, grabbing onto the nearest support. The world tilted, chaos unfurling around them like a cataclysmic symphony. For a moment it seemed as if everything would come crashing down, their efforts reduced to dust and echoes. But as the tremors subsided, Quillen found himself still standing, battered but unbroken. "Barely felt a thing," Dax said with a shaky laugh, though his knuckles were white with the force of his grip. "Speak for yourself," Juno replied, brushing debris from her shoulders. "I think my life just flashed before my eyes, and it was a very boring movie." Quillen surveyed the damage, relief mingling with the adrenaline still coursing through him. "Corvus, report." "Structural integrity holding," Corvus replied, sounding almost impressed. "No significant breaches detected." "Close call," Quillen said, exhaling a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "But we're still in the game." "Just barely," Dax muttered, though there was a spark of hope in his eyes, a defiance that refused to be snuffed out. "Well then," Juno said, her voice carrying a note of determination that was mirrored in each of them. "Let's get back to it." As they resumed their work, Quillen felt a renewed sense of purpose. They'd faced the brink and stepped back, not unscathed but unbowed. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but they'd hold the line for as long as it took. In the heart of the alien base, surrounded by uncertainty and danger, they found something they'd almost forgotten: the indomitable will to fight back. Because in the end, that was all they had, the stubborn refusal to let the universe have the last word. Dax gave a mock salute towards the now stabilized console, wiping imaginary sweat off his brow. "There we go. One more step towards not dying in an alien tomb. Call me an optimist, but I think we might just keep breathing after all." Juno shook her head, her eyes glued to the drone feed. "You do realize that sarcasm is basically a defense mechanism, right? Like pretending everything's fine even when the universe is crumbling around us." Dax smirked. "What can I say? I love living in denial. It's a nice place with a lovely view of screw you reality." "Focus, team," Quillen interjected, his voice a mix of exasperation and nothing keeps me down determination. "We need to find a way to use what we've got here. This alien tech might be our ticket out of this mess." The ancient console's screen flickered ominously, glowing symbols casting strange shadows across their faces. It was like staring into the abyss and hoping the abyss had a change of heart. Quillen leaned closer, squinting at the alien runes as if sheer willpower could make sense of them. "Corvus, any chance you can translate these party invitations?" "Analyzing," Corvus replied with the kind of mechanical patience only a machine could muster. "It appears to be a schematic, possibly relating to energy redirection and manipulation." "Energy redirection." Juno's eyes lit up with interest, a scientist's curiosity kindled by a mystery. "If we could harness that, we might stabilize the entire base. Maybe even restore some of its original functions, or turn us into space dust," Dax quipped. "Always nice to have options." Quillen ignored the jab, focusing instead on the flickering symbols. He could feel something potential, a spark, the kind of breakthrough that could turn their situation on its head. "We need to rig this up to our systems. If we can do that, we might just have a fighting chance." Juno nodded, already moving to examine the console's connections. It's like trying to hook up a toaster with a black hole, but I've dealt with worse. Probably. That explains a lot about your cooking, Dax teased, earning a playful shove in response. Quillen watched them with a mix of pride and urgency. They were battered, on edge, and hanging by a thread, but at least they were still hanging on. All right, let's get to it. Corvus, keep monitoring those power levels. We need to know if anything changes. Understood, Doctor. Sable, Corvus responded, its calm voice a stark contrast to their frenetic efforts. As Juno worked, Dax held the tools, occasionally glancing over his shoulder as if expecting the base to collapse at any moment. You know, I'd always hoped to die in a blaze of glory. Didn't picture it involving alien tech and an incontinent power grid. Don't worry, Juno said, not looking up from her work. If we screw this up, you'll get your blaze of glory. Just not the kind you can brag about. Comforting, Dax replied dryly. Truly, I'm comforted. Quillen tuned out their exchange, his mind focused on the task at hand. He knew better than to expect miracles, but right now he'd settle for a minor cosmic favor, just enough to tip the odds in their favor. As they worked, the room buzzed with a tense energy, a silent pact among them to fight against the inevitable. They were just 3 people in a forgotten corner of the universe, but damn if they'd go down quietly. Think I've got it, Juno finally announced, a hint of triumph in her voice. The consoles linked up. Now we just need to figure out how to channel the energy without frying ourselves. Piece of cake, Dax said, though his expression suggested otherwise. Corvus, Quillen called, running his fingers over the console's surface. Any insights on how we can control this without becoming crispy critters? Recalibrating systems, Corvus replied. Suggest initiating a controlled energy transfer to test stability. Translation: don't press all the shiny buttons at once, Dax interpreted. Thanks, Captain Obvious, Juno said, rolling her eyes. But seriously, one wrong move and we could end up as cosmic confetti. Quillen nodded, his gaze fixed on the console. This was it, the moment that could make or break them. All right, let's do this. Carefully. The air felt charged, a tingling sensation that prickled across their skin as Quillen activated the system. The console's lights flared, symbols dancing like a demented alien ballet. Here goes nothing, Quillen muttered, adjusting the controls with the delicate touch of someone defusing a bomb. As the energy began to flow, the base seemed to come alive, a deep humming resonating through the walls. It was like awakening a sleeping giant, a force that demanded respect and caution. Corvus, report, Quillen said, his voice barely audible over the low thrum. Energy levels stabilizing, Corvus replied. Base systems responding positively, efficiency increasing by 15%. 15%, Dax repeated, a mix of relief and disbelief coloring his words. Almost feels like we know what we're doing. Don't jinx it, Juno warned, her eyes glued to the readouts. We're not out of the woods yet. Quillen allowed himself a small smile, the first real one in what felt like forever. But we're heading in the right direction. Yeah, Dax agreed, his usual sarcasm softened by a rare note of optimism. Guess we're not as doomed as we thought. For the first time, hope flickered in the dim chamber, a fragile yet undeniable presence. They'd found a way to hold back the darkness, if only for a moment. It wasn't a cure-all, but it was something, enough to keep fighting, enough to plan for the next step. All right, team, Quillen said, his resolve renewed. Let's keep pushing. We've got a chance to turn this around, and I don't plan on letting it slip away. Juno nodded, determination etched into her features. Let's give it everything we've got. Dax cracked his knuckles, a faint grin on his lips. Hell, it's not like we've got anything better to do. With their newfound momentum, they returned to the task at hand, working in sync like a well-oiled machine. Each step forward felt like a victory, each small success a testament to their resilience. As they maneuvered through the alien technology, Quillen couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie, a bond forged in the fires of adversity. They were more than just colleagues now, they were comrades united by a shared struggle. Corvus, Quillen said, feeling a surge of confidence. Keep us updated on any changes. We've got a lot riding on this. Affirmative, Dr. Sable, Corvus replied, monitoring systems continuously. The base's hum settled into a steady rhythm, a comforting pulse that seemed to echo their own determination. For the first time, Quillen felt like they were on the verge of something big, something that could tip the scales in their favor. Juno, how's it looking? Quillen asked, glancing over at her. We're getting there, Juno replied, her eyes sharp with focus. If we can maintain this rate, we'll have the systems back online in no time. Dax leaned against a support beam, a rare look of contentment on his face. Not bad for a bunch of underpaid explorers, huh? Not bad at all, Quillen agreed, feeling a sense of pride in their achievements. They'd come a long way from when they'd first stumbled into this alien labyrinth, and for the first time the odds felt slightly less insurmountable. Let's keep moving, Quillen said, rallying the team. We've got momentum, and I don't want to waste it. The work continued, each step forward bringing them closer to their goal. The alien technology, once a mystery, began to reveal its secrets, each new discovery adding to their understanding. As they labored, the base seemed to respond, its ancient systems awakening to their touch. The console's symbols glowed with a newfound vibrancy, the alien inscriptions morphing into a language they were finally beginning to decipher. Corvus, how are the energy levels? Quillen asked, his mind racing with possibilities. Steady and improving, Corvus replied, a hint of satisfaction in its tone. Base systems at 40% capacity and rising. 40%, Dax echoed, shaking his head in disbelief. From 0 to 40 in under an hour, we might just pull this off. Juno flashed a grin, her spirit lifted by their progress. Who knew we were such overachievers? Quillen chuckled, feeling a warmth spread through him. Let's see if we can keep this pace. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're damn close. With their spirits lifted, they pressed on, each small victory fueling their determination. The alien base, once a menacing enigma, was slowly transforming into an ally, its secrets laid bare through their efforts. As the Iors stretched into a blur, the base's systems continued to stabilize, each hum of the machinery a testament to their success. They'd faced the impossible and lived to tell the tale, a testament to human ingenuity and sheer stubbornness. Corvus status update, Quillen requested, wiping sweat from his brow. Base systems at 60% capacity, Corvus reported. Structural integrity greatly improved, energy retention optimized. 60%, Dax whooped, his expression a mix of triumph and disbelief. We did it, we bloody well did it. Don't celebrate just yet, Juno cautioned, though her eyes sparkled with excitement. We've still got a long way to go. But we've made progress, Quillen said, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. We're not just surviving anymore, we're fighting back. The team shared a moment of quiet satisfaction, each of them aware of the significance of their achievement. They'd taken the first steps towards reclaiming the alien base, transforming it from a death trap into a potential sanctuary. Corvus, Quillen said, his voice filled with an uncharacteristic lightness. Keep monitoring those systems. I want to know the minute anything changes. Affirmative, Dr. Sable, Corvus replied, its voice steady and reassuring. The team exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They'd faced the brink of disaster and emerged stronger, their resolve unshaken. All right, Quillen said, his voice firm with determination. Let's get back to work. We've got a base to save. With renewed vigor, they resumed their tasks, each of them fueled by a common purpose. They were more than just survivors now. They were reclaimers, determined to wrest control from the jaws of chaos. The alien base, once a shadowy labyrinth, had become their proving ground, a place where they'd discovered their strength and resilience. They'd faced the abyss and refused to blink, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. As they worked, Quillen felt a sense of anticipation building within him. They were on the cusp of something great, a turning point that could change everything. Corvus, Quillen said, his voice steady. Keep a close eye on those systems. We've got a lot riding on this. Understood, Doctor. Sable, Corvus replied, its voice a constant companion in the alien depths. The team continued their efforts, each step bringing them closer to their goal. They'd come a long way from the brink of despair, and now, for the first time, the future seemed less daunting. With determination and grit, they pressed on, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They'd found hope in the darkest of places, and they weren't about to let go. As they worked, the shadows receded, replaced by the light of possibility. They were no longer just surviving, they were fighting for something greater. And for the first time, that future seemed within reach. The alien base was humming along like an ancient beast begrudgingly waking up from a millennia-long nap. Quillen and his merry band of misfits were doing what they did best, stumbling through impenetrable alien architecture, trying not to trip over their own brilliance in the process. The console's lights pulsed in a sort of alien Morse code, or maybe it was just mocking them with its superior intelligence. "All right, gang," Quillen said, his voice echoing off the weirdly organic walls. "Let's see if we can get this cosmic blender to mix us a winning cocktail." Dax smirked, leaning against a wall that looked like it might have been designed by a particularly sadistic artist. "So the plan is to poke the universe's biggest bear in the eye and hope it doesn't eat us, pretty much," Quillen replied, trying to sound more optimistic than he felt. "But remember, it's a very old bear. I'm sure that makes it much less dangerous," Juno muttered, her eyes glued to the drone feed. The little machine buzzed around like a curious fly, capturing the alien inscriptions that cluttered the walls. "These symbols are still a headache wrapped in an enigma. Corvus, any chance these scribbles tell us how not to end up as cosmic toast?" Quillen asked, fingers dancing over the console's controls like they were the keys to a very unpredictable piano. "Analyzing," Corvus replied, the machine's voice as dry as ever. "If my calculations are correct, these symbols indicate a sequence for energy containment." "Ah, the old don't blow up the universe sequence," Dax quipped. "A classic." Quillen shot him a look. "Not helping. Wasn't trying to," Dax shot back with a grin. "Just observing." Juno's fingers flew over her own console, eyes darting between the readouts and the symbols. "If we can stabilize this system, we might just pull this off. Hate to break it to you, Dax, but you might be right." "Don't sound so disappointed," Dax said, smirking. "It's a rare occurrence, I know." The base shuddered as they adjusted the controls, the vibrations thrumming through their bones. It was a living, breathing entity, and they were poking it with a very large stick. Quillen took a deep breath, focusing on the task at hand. "Let's synchronize our efforts. We've got this one shot to get it right." "No pressure," Juno muttered, eyes glued to the drone feed. "Just the survival of the solar system. Think of it as practice for our next existential crisis," Dax said, his voice tinged with a strange sort of cheer. "Corvus status?" Quillen asked, fiddling with the controls as if they might suddenly reveal a cheat code for not dying horribly. "Energy levels peaking," Corvus reported. "System integrity holding. Recommend immediate activation before stability declines." "Now's as good a time as any," Quillen said, taking a steadying breath. "On my mark," Dax chuckled, shaking his head. "For a guy playing with fire, you sure are calm." "Yeah. Well, I hear it's all the rage these days," Quillen replied, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. 3, 2, 1, now." Quillen barked, slamming his hand down with a flourish that would have made any stage magician proud. The base's hum crescendoed into a roar, the alien symbols on the console lighting up like they were trying to outshine the sun. It was a symphony of light and sound, a chaotic dance that could either save them or doom them. "Holy crap," Juno breathed, her usual composure momentarily shattered by the sheer spectacle of it all. Dax's grin widened. "I think we just pissed off the universe, or impressed it," Quillen countered, his eyes fixed on the console. "Corvus, what's happening?" "Energy containment successful," Corvus replied, its voice calm amidst the chaos. "Protective barrier initiated." "Analyzing effects on solar system. Did we just save our asses?" Dax asked, the incredulity in his voice almost palpable. "Looks like it," Juno replied, her voice barely above a whisper. A small smile crept across her face, the kind that spoke of relief and triumph in equal measure. Quillen let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. So, we did it. We actually did it. Don't sound so surprised, Dax said, his tone teasing but warm. We're not dead, after all. For once, I'm happy to be wrong, Quillen admitted, glancing around at his team. They were battered and worn, but they were alive. And that was something. Well, it's not every day you get to flip off the universe and live to tell the tale, Juno said, shaking her head in disbelief. Corvus, keep an eye on things, Quillen instructed, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Let us know if anything changes. Affirmative, Doctor. Sable, Corvus replied, its presence a constant comfort. The base's hum settled into a gentle, almost soothing rhythm, like the purring of a giant cosmic cat now contently curled up around the solar system. For the first time in what felt like forever, they could breathe easy. Guess we're not cosmic confetti after all, Dax said, crossing his arms with a satisfied nod. Not today, anyway, Quillen agreed, feeling a strange sense of peace settling over him. It wasn't often you got to defy the odds and win. Juno looked at the console, then at her colleagues. So what now? Now, Quillen said, we wait and see what the universe throws at us next, and hope it's not a bigger bear, Dax added, grinning. Whatever happens, we'll face it together, Quillen said, feeling a strange warmth at those words. We've already proven we're more than just survivors. Juno regarded him with a thoughtful smile. Reclaimers, then, reclaimers, Quillen agreed, the word feeling right in a way nothing else had. They stood there for a moment, basking in their hard-won triumph. It wasn't a perfect victory, nothing ever was, but it was enough. Enough to hold back the darkness, enough to give them hope for whatever came next. Well, I guess we're officially in the impossible things before breakfast club, Dax said, breaking the silence with his usual irreverence. Just another day in the universe, Juno replied, rolling her eyes but smiling nonetheless. Here's to many more impossible days, Quillen said, his voice filled with a kind of grim satisfaction. They turned back to the task at hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They'd found a way to survive, a way to fight back, and that was something worth celebrating. Corvus, keep monitoring those systems, Quillen said, casting one last glance at the console. I want to know if anything changes. Understood, Doctor. Sable, Corvus replied, ever vigilant. As they resumed their work, the base's hum was a comforting presence, a reminder of what they'd accomplished. They'd faced the impossible and come out on top, and that was something no one could ever take away. Well, Dax said, clapping his hands together, looks like we've got a new lease on life. And a pretty damn interesting one at that, Juno added, her eyes bright with anticipation. Quillen chuckled, feeling a sense of camaraderie with his team that he'd never really experienced before. They were more than just colleagues now. They were a family of sorts, bound together by their shared struggles and triumphs. All right, team, Quillen said, his voice filled with a kind of quiet determination. Let's see what else this base has to offer. With renewed resolve, they set to work, each of them driven by the same unyielding spirit. They were reclaimers, and they weren't about to let anything stand in their way. The alien base, once a shadowy labyrinth of confusion and danger, had become their home, a place where they'd discovered their true potential. They'd faced the abyss and refused to blink, proving that even in the darkest of places, humanity's light could shine through. As they worked, Quillen couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building within him. They were on the cusp of something great, a turning point that could change everything. Corvus, Quillen said, his voice steady, keep a close eye on those systems. We've got a lot riding on this. Understood, Doctor. Sable, Corvus replied, its voice a constant companion in the alien depths. The team continued their efforts, each step bringing them closer to their goal. They'd come a long way from the brink of despair, and now, for the first time, the future seemed less daunting. With determination and grit, they pressed on, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They'd found hope in the darkest of places, and they weren't about to let go. As they worked, the shadows receded, replaced by the light of possibility. They were no longer just surviving, they were fighting for something greater. And for the first time, that future seemed within reach. The alien base had stopped trying to kill them for now, which was always a nice change of pace. As the hum of cosmic energy settled into a background noise that was more reassuring than alarming, the team took advantage of this rare moment of calm. Just another day where they weren't being crushed, vaporized, or existentially annihilated. Who knew? Maybe they'd make it a habit. Well, Dax said, breaking the silence as he leaned against a console that probably controlled something important. I think that went rather well. I mean, we're not dead, which is more than I can say for most Mondays. I wouldn't start planning the victory parade just yet, Juno replied, her attention flicking back to the drone feed. The universe has this charming way of kicking us when we least expect it. Like when it tossed us in here like a chew toy, Dax quipped, his grin never wavering. Exactly. But hey, at least we've got a front row seat to the end of everything, Juno said dryly. Quillen Sable, their perpetually prickly leader, took a moment to actually let himself breathe. He looked around at his team, Dax, the incorrigible optimist, Juno, the sharp-minded realist, and Corvus, the machine with the voice of a dispassionate funeral director. All right, Quillen began, since we're not currently being pulverized, let's take stock. We've managed to stabilize the system and prevent the, cosmic endgame. That's one way to put it, Dax interjected. I prefer we gave the universe the finger and it blinked first. Let's not get cocky, Juno cautioned, her eyes still scanning for any signs of cosmic betrayal. Corvus, any updates? Quillen asked, deciding it was best to rely on the one team member who couldn't crack a joke. Current status is stable, Corvus reported, though I recommend continued monitoring. Alien systems often exhibit unpredictable behavior. Like a teenager with a new driver's license, Dax muttered. Quillen rubbed his forehead. Right. So we're babysitting a cosmic toddler with a penchant for nuclear tantrums. Wonderful. Welcome to parenthood where every day is riddled with potential catastrophe, Juno said, her lips twitching into a smile. Yeah, but now we've got interstellar daycare, Dax added. Quillen couldn't help but chuckle. All right, folks, let's not forget why we're here. We need to make sure these systems will hold long enough for us to get back and tell the galaxy what we've found. Juno adjusted the drone's trajectory, sending it deeper into the maze of alien architecture. The drone obeyed with the kind of loyalty only machines could muster, silent, efficient, completely devoid of sarcasm. An admirable quality, except when you needed a good laugh. So, assuming we don't get atomized by some cosmic accident, what's next? Juno asked, her voice echoing slightly off the alien walls. We make sure these systems keep ticking long enough for us to get home and file one hell of an expense report, Quillen replied. That's if we don't accidentally discover a new way to blow ourselves up, Dax added helpfully. Ever the optimist, Dax, Juno said with a roll of her eyes. But seriously, we've got a shot at something big here. And by big, I mean don't blow up the universe big, Quillen nodded. That's the spirit. Corvus, give us a rundown on the system's stability. Assessing, Corvus replied, its sensors flashing with an almost clinical detachment. Current status is stable. Probability of immediate catastrophic failure is low. Low's better than high, Dax noted. I'll take it. The alien base, for the moment, seemed content to let them tinker with its innards without trying to violently eject them into the void. That was nice. It was almost like it was starting to warm up to them. Or maybe it was just saving up for some spectacularly painful revenge later. With alien tech, who the hell knew? So, Dax said, stretching his arms as if he'd just finished a workout. Now that we've saved everything, who's up for a drink in a place like this? Juno asked, raising an eyebrow. What would you even drink? Cosmic sludge. Hey, I'll take what I can get. It's been a long day of not dying, Dax replied with a grin. Quillen allowed himself a small smile, feeling the weight of their shared survival settle comfortably between them. Let's just make sure we don't leave the base in worse shape than how we found it. Juno leaned closer to the console, her fingers brushing over the controls. You know, this tech, it's incredible. If we can understand it, who knows what else we could accomplish, Dax shrugged. My guess. Piss off more ancient aliens, or maybe, Juno continued, we could find a way to use it to really make a difference. Quillen nodded. That's the hope. But first, let's get out of here alive. They continued their work, each of them focused on the task at hand. The alien base, once a labyrinth of death and confusion, now felt different. They'd faced the darkness and come out the other side stronger, more united. They were a mismatched bunch, sure, but they'd proven that humanity wasn't just about surviving. It was about fighting back with every ounce of defiance they could muster. Corvus, Quillen said, his tone a mix of determination and weariness, keep monitoring those systems. I want to know if anything changes. Affirmative, Doctor. Sable, Corvus replied, a constant presence in their chaotic journey. As they worked, Quillen couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They'd taken on the impossible and won. Not in the usual storybook sense, where everything ends in a neat bow, but in the gritty, messy way that real life often demanded. All right, team, Quillen said, his voice carrying a hint of optimism even he was surprised to feel. Let's finish what we started and get out of here. They nodded, each of them sharing a look that spoke of triumph, resilience, and the kind of camaraderie that could only be forged in the fires of shared peril. Think we'll get a medal for this? Dax asked, his tone half serious, half joking. Maybe a nice plaque, Juno replied, or a stern lecture from the higher-ups about playing with alien fire. Quillen chuckled. I'll settle for a good night's sleep on a bed that doesn't feel like it's trying to swallow me whole. The bass continued its gentle hum, as if to remind them that the universe was still very much alive around them. It was a sound that promised both danger and possibility, a reminder of the fine line they walked every day. But for now, it was a comfort, a sign that they'd done something right. All right, Quillen said, taking a deep breath, let's wrap this up and head back. We've got a galaxy to inform, and they're going to want to know why we took our sweet time. Dax grinned. And why we don't have any souvenirs. Yeah, I'm sure Customs would love that, Juno added with a smirk. Together, they began the process of securing their work, making sure that the systems they'd stabilized would hold long enough for them to get back and report their findings. Each action was deliberate, careful, a testament to their shared goal of ensuring that the universe didn't end on their watch. As they worked, Quillen felt a sense of hope. It was a strange thing, given everything they'd been through, but it was there nonetheless. They'd faced the end and come out stronger. They were more than just survivors. They were reclaimers, taking back what was theirs and refusing to let the universe dictate their fate. Hey, Corvus, Dax said, his tone laced with mischief. Any chance you could whip up a victory speech for us? Something grand, with a lot of fancy words. Speech generation is outside my primary function, Corvus replied, sounding almost like it was smiling if a machine could smile. Figures, Dax said, rolling his eyes. Quillen laughed, feeling lighter than he had in ages. They'd done it against all odds. They were alive, they were free, and they'd proved that humanity could stand tall, even in the face of cosmic doom. All right, team, Quillen said, his voice filled with a kind of quiet satisfaction. Let's get back and show them what we're made of. They gathered their gear, their movements fluid and coordinated. They were a team, a unit, and they'd faced the impossible together. As they made their way out of the alien base, leaving behind the mysteries and dangers, Quillen felt a sense of closure. They'd faced the darkness and refused to blink. They'd stood their ground and shown the universe what humanity was capable of. Think they'll believe us? Juno asked as they made their way through the narrow tunnels that had once seemed so daunting. They'd better, Dax replied, because I'm not going through all that again just to prove a point. Quillen chuckled, feeling the tension of their journey slowly easing away. They were heading home, and for the first time it felt like a place worth fighting for. Let's just hope the universe doesn't decide to throw us another curveball on the way back, Quillen said, though there was no mistaking the hope in his voice. Let it try, Juno replied, her tone fierce and determined. will be ready. As they continued their journey, leaving behind the alien base and its secrets, Quillen couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation for what lay ahead. They'd face the darkness and emerge stronger, more united. Whatever the universe had in store for them next, they'd be ready. Together, they'd face it head-on, with all the defiance and grit that humanity could muster. They were reclaimers, after all. And reclaimers never back down from a challenge.